have some questions. Not so many today. We'll see how it goes. It may not take the whole time. And I kind of was skimming them over just a few minutes ago, just got them. And some that have some very similar flavors to them. So I might read out just a few of them in a little batch here, and kind of, some of them they're slightly different in some ways, but some similarities. And then kind of go from there. I have a problem in general dealing with people. I always judge them and find faults with them. The fault finding may be valid in that they are doing something immoral or against the law. So I am constantly enraged, and because of this I have very limited social contacts. In fact, none at all. I am 44 and have been living by myself since I left home at the age of 20. I have everything in abundance, material-wise. But I do not have peace of mind. I feel like a failure. I see people all around me having a happy life. Even birds and animals live in pairs. But here I am living in a 4-story, 4-bedroom home with no one to share it with. How can I find peace? Thank you. And another one. Why do we feel lonely? Sometimes I feel lonely, but the presence of others is not removing the loneliness. How have you handled loneliness in your own life, and do you still feel it? When you feel, and then another question, when you feel unwelcomed in a group or when you feel someone dislikes you, should you just accept it and leave it, or should you make an effort to be accepted? I guess the pain it causes comes from the desire to be liked by others. Okay, then there's some others that are sort of, but I'll just leave those 3. Yeah, to some extent, it's problems that being a human being sometimes just brings up. There's a whole lot of physical and mental states of mind that are unpleasant and difficult, and not what we want to have to experience. There's just the whole range of afflictive emotions and moods and social anxieties and fears and loneliness, on the emotional level, mental level, and then not even talking about the human realm, and we all experience these things at one level or another. Sometimes knows what reason, don't have a lot of difficulties or unpleasant things in their lives, and other people have a huge amount of it. You could say it's and basically it's kind of a big question, who knows, in a way, or some combination of all of them. Offer any particular sage advice on a psychological level. Really, I'm not a psychotherapist, and conventional level. But a couple of things come to mind just from more of the Dhammic perspective, and a little bit of personal experience and how I see things, and maybe a little bit in the psychological realm, that for the kind of concentrating on the shortcomings of others, or the unskillfulness of others, and feeling upset or angry or judgmental about them. This is not an uncommon experience. it's kind of hard to know exactly where it might come from. Everybody's different. We all, like I said, we all have our different conditioning and karma and whatever. But one thing I think that might be worth thinking about a long time ago when I was kind of experiencing some similar kinds of things of fault-finding and judgmental, and that really it actually stems oftentimes from how one views oneself, and that measuring oneself against some ideal standard and coming up short, then that often translates into how one views other people too, and vice versa. So looking at that particular trait and asking oneself, okay, well, am I a perfectionist? There's back in the late 80s or so, I can't remember exactly when, but it was, the title of it pretty much says the story, and it's called the Perfectionist's Script for Self-Defeat. So it just basically is pointing out if you have these perfectionist tendencies, again, from whatever reason, and you're constantly measuring yourself against, some sort of, then you're just going to have this tendency to fault find inside yourself, and usually it translates to other people too. We're not all that discriminating oftentimes. So just looking at seeing if that might be a possibility, how one views oneself, expecting people to be other than what they are, and the pain of that, the pain of just having. And as far as the other questions, that person also expressed, it sounded like, loneliness, living alone and not having people to share with, and these other questions about feeling lonely. Just from a Dharma perspective, I think the best thing to do is just to try and, cultivate the skillful qualities inside one. Bhante Gunaratana, he had just read something from Bhante Ji, saying that basically, this kind of inner contentment kind of really delve deeply into all sorts of causes and conditions, but just to practice virtue, keep the precepts, live a harmless life, guard against letting, extreme states of anger, and those, just do those things and keep practicing with those things, and whatever happens in the social realm will follow suit in its own time. So I thought that was a nice little summary, and I particularly have often thought myself about the power of generosity and giving, of some kinds of depression, come from our not putting ourselves out sometimes to be of help and service to others, and to give generously of our time especially, and the power of that kind of generosity. So, I always encourage people who are experiencing this to kind of move a bit, as much as possible anyway, out of kind of self-concern, kind of self-isolating focus, because that tends to really exaggerate the sense of self and self-importance in a way, self-isolation, self-concern, yeah, and try and, or who need companionship or need a bit of time, go volunteer in a nursing home, or, take some hospice training as a volunteer, or, whatever, little leagues, just ways to get out and mentor somebody, give of yourself, and that process of giving in whatever way is possible, whatever way fits in with your life, really, can open up and broaden a person's perspective as well as, of course, as I said before, keeping precepts and guarding the mind against those of really traveling into and believing in those very negative mind states. Dislike you and you feel unwelcome, well, what to do. It does come from that desire to be liked by others, and we can't control that necessarily unless you're doing something that's really, unskillful. But people are people, and you just have to kind of work on your own inner contentment. Let's see. I have a question about contemplating feelings, particularly about neutral feelings. Somewhere I have heard and read that neutral is the same as delusion. If I'm not mistaken, that reference was made in the book Karma and the End of Karma, which I think is by Ajahn Sucitto. And in other cases, I have heard that neutral is neither pleasant nor unpleasant. So, which is it? Delusion or just neutral or as a simple state? Or could it be either at different situations? Please elaborate on neutral feelings. Much gratitude. Yeah, those are the reference to the Vedana, the feeling tone of any moment of experience or contact. And generally defined as either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, the longer. Delusion, I suspect that is not the way it's stated in the book, although I can't tell you for sure. I've read the book, but I don't remember the reference there. But it is not, neutral feeling is not the same as delusion. Neutral feeling is like I was saying, it's a mental factor that arises with every moment of experience, with every moment of contact. Not neutral feeling, but feeling in general, so that in every moment of experience, any kind of physical or mental event will have a feeling tone associated with it of one of those three. What you might be thinking about in terms of delusion is sort of what's called the underlying tendencies in relation to the three forms of feeling. And there's a great, wonderful sutta along many lines that I would refer you to. It's Majjhima, and I think it's 44. It's the Chula Vedala Sutta, the discourse on lesser questions, I guess, lesser questions and answers. The bhikkhuni Dhammadina and lay supporter, actually, her former husband, as it were, Visakha. And it just has a number of different themes and topics, but one of them is on Vedana, feeling. And a couple of things that I remember from it that kind of stand out. Quotation does talk about this a bit, but the first one, in terms of feeling, is he asks the question of the nun Bhikkhuni Dhammadina, is pleasant feeling always pleasant? Is painful feeling always painful? Is neutral feeling always neutral? And she says no. Painful feeling is painful. Pleasant feeling is pleasant when it persists, and becomes painful when it changes. Neutral feeling is painful when it is not known, and it is pleasant when it is known, when it becomes known. So I thought Paul's example yesterday, feeling like bubbles in a rain puddle, constantly changing based on certain causes and conditions. And when they change, or when conditions change, the feeling tone changes. Then the other one, which is more pertinent to the reference to delusion, is I can't remember the question exactly, but maybe it's just something like, what is the underlying tendency to feeling pleasant, painful, neutral? And the answer is that the underlying tendency with the underlying tendency to painful feeling is aversion, wanting to get rid of it, wanting to get away from it. The underlying tendency to neutral feeling is delusion or confusion, just not knowing it, not being aware of its presence, or letting it cloud, just kind of getting lost in a particular neutral state of mind and not seeing it clearly. So that could be the reference that this person is referring to, that neutral feeling isn't the same as delusion, but unseen, and unacknowledged for what it is, the underlying tendency could be regarded as delusion. But I hope I'm not misquoting that sutta too much, and I would refer you to that for the real deal. Okay, a couple about family relations. My family says I should be more social. They say happiness comes from interacting with others and having a social life. I like to be on my own and prefer less interactions but meaningful ones. It's difficult to understand how much effort and time we should put into our social life. Is it really necessary? How would you approach this? How much effort do you put into interacting with others? Are we social animals, like Aristotle claims we are? And I live away from my family and I started missing them a lot. I realized that on the one hand, so social relationships, family relationships, yeah, I mean, in a way, I'm not quite, it depends on how you use the term, how you're using the term social animals. I think if one, I'm not sure that, we're necessarily social animals in that sense that, we are destined and have to be, always with the herd, as it were. And certainly in the monastic life, singular. But there is, in my mind, there is some truth to the fact that most people are socially inclined, and that as human beings we do have certain, this is an overgeneralization, but certain needs for without any kind of love or physical contact or socialization or interacting with human beings, they end up being severely disturbed mentally as they get older. So right from the beginning, that sense of human contact is vital for healthy development anyway. And then as you get older, things will change depending on your own proclivities. Some having a wish for more and a need for more, and some with a wish and a need for less. Produces a sense of contentment and is supportive for the development of the spiritual path. certainly for myself personally, I tend to be a relatively social person. I do like I do like solitude as well. Find a nice balance here at this monastery, and tend towards this person's particular proclivity to be on my own and prefer less interactions but meaningful ones. So to me that rings true. To have, a few good, solid friends in the holy life, one on the path, but not just kind of having to spend all sorts of time hanging out and idly just kind of killing time because you don't want to be by yourself. So it is finding that balance, and I do think that. Most people, even if they kind of think of themselves as complete loners, most people benefit from having at least some meaningful contact with other human beings, if not daily, fairly regularly. How to handle family who feels like you kind of how you have to negotiate the family realm. You just have to kind of, there's certain family obligations that maybe one needs to fulfill to honor those relationships and not let them completely dissolve, and also to, let others benefit from your practice, even if they're not interested in the tradition or the teachings or the lifestyle or any of it. Just if you are steady and keep your own focus on what's important, then even if you never talk about it at all with family members who are not interested, just your bearing and your way of being conscious verbal level. So unless it's like an abusive or painful, difficult relationship, it's useful to maintain those contacts within boundaries, and it's kind of just up to you to find out what those boundaries are, so they don't become draining and counterproductive and take you away from what you need to do. But is like I said, honoring that relationship in the best way you can, and looking to see when the times that you're spending with them, or the amount of time that you're spending, is just through attachment and distraction, and realizing that's it's not necessarily unskillful or painful or like going against precepts or anything like that, but that it's sort of like, the days and nights are relentlessly passing. How well am I spending my time? Life is short. Practice opportunities aren't, all that common. The path takes a fair amount inside your own self, and not succumb to just the easygoing pleasantness of just hanging out with say, family members. So finding that balance inside yourself that is something you have to do. Okay, thank you so very much for this online retreat and allowing us to ask questions. I thank you from the bottom of my heart for answering my numerous, in capitals, questions so kindly. Really, thank you so much. 4 exclamation points. It was very helpful. Sending lots of virtual metta your way. 3. Dear Ajahn, this is a question about bhava-tanha/chanda. During these days, I've noticed my usual harsh reactions over unwanted situations has lessened, and I attribute it to lengthier meditations on mindfulness of the body. Sadhu. For example, a few days ago, after a long sitting, I found that my house was a complete mess, and the neighbors were being annoying. Some days ago, I would have shouted and rambled about how nothing works well here. However, this time I couldn't react. I wouldn't feel anything in the body that could trigger a harsh reaction. I thought this was a state I could aspire to be in, not to make a big mess of everyday unwanted situations, but just act upon them calmly. I saw the benefit not only for me in terms of right speech, but also for those around me. Thus, I have decided to increase the length of my meditations after the retreat. All good stuff. Now, it's not clear to me, is this aspiration bhava tanha or chanda? I would say chanda in terms of like Dhamma chanda, and maintain the ones that you've developed. This is right effort, and it's a very skillful thing. Tanha tends to be associated with kind of a habitual craving that takes one into unwholesome states of mind. So skillful aspirations that have skillful and wholesome results, or are intended in that way anyway, would be okay, let's see. Sometimes I think about doing a good deed, and right after having the thought, I think of all the side benefits that I would. What should I do in those cases? Not do the good action so I don't get the side benefits if there is no way for me to do the deed without benefiting from it? I feel that I am no longer being truly generous in those types of situations. Well, generous acts, come from a whole wide range. Unless it's going to cause harm in some way, just going ahead and doing the generous deed, no matter what the motivation is better than not doing it at all. So you might want to give somebody you might want to give somebody something that you don't need anymore, and that's where the motivation started from. Is like, oh, I don't have this thing in my possession, and I really like it, and I'd have a hard time parting with it. But so and so, I'll bet they'd really appreciate this, and it would be something that they would really treasure and make use of. So I want to give it to them for that reason. So you can see the difference in motivations for giving something away, and the second one might have, kind of a more opening, broadening, gladdening effect in the heart than the first one. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't do the first one. So, yeah, it's just to recognize that there's different levels of motivation in giving something. The Buddha the highest motivation, if I remember this correctly, is that one acts with generosity because it ennobles the mind, ennobles the heart, which is essentially creating a quality of mind, a quality of heart that moves one in the direction of freedom. Freedom on the path. So many different motivations, but still keep doing it, and then that you're working with. Okay. The last question is a very quick one. Could you ask Ajahn Karuṇadhammo? Yes, I could. what the citation to the sutta was that he was talking about last night. And it's in the section on the nine, and it's number 36. So Anguttara 9's 36, and that's the numbering, at least in Bhikkhu Bodhi's more recent version. If you're looking on Access to Insight, sometimes if it's, say, a translation by Ajahn Tanisaro, then sometimes there might be off by a few numbers because of slight differences in the translations that are used, or the original texts that are used. So, but 936 is the one in Bhikkhu Bodhi's book. So that's it for the